Here we go. We are live. Good evening, everybody. I'm Julie Barrett, founder of Conservative Ladies of America and Conservative Ladies of Washington. We are kicking off our 2024 virtual tour with Semi Bird, who is running for governor in Washington State. We did our first virtual tour in 2022, which was our first election cycle as an organization, and it was really well received. And so I thought, let's do it again. People love these virtual events. It's a great way to get to know candidates, and so I'm excited that we get to start it off with a governor candidate, and that we get to start it off with you, Semi.
Thank you,
And just
Julie.
for our audience, you and I met in person for the very first time a little over a week ago at the Benton County Republican Day dinner. And that was a super good time. I enjoyed
Yeah,
meeting you and your lovely wife,
thank you.
Anne.
Thank you.
And one of the things I want to say really struck me about you as a person was the love and respect, the adoration that I could see that you have for your wife. And you said something, I probably won't get it right verbatim, but you made it clear that you don't make any decisions. You don't, big decisions. Obviously, you can make the small decisions, but the big decisions you make with her,
I
and that's
do.
a team thing. And I really love that about you, and your wife is just darling and sweet, and I enjoyed getting to meet her. Um, I'd love for you to just start us off with, why did you decide to run for governor?
Oh my goodness, I want to sit here and talk more about my wife actually, but no, thank you for saying what you said. Anne is my life. She's no decisions do I make without her. So it's a whether you call yourself the captain of the ship, you're nothing without everyone who makes the ship. Well, she's all that in one. We do it together, and I love life with her, and I would not do life without her. So thank you for that. So running for governor, it's truly a calling for me. It's not something that I would have ever wanted to do or thought about doing, but it's more of a call to service, and it really is, and especially at a time like this, where, as you know, and many of your listeners know, that my service is being tarnished, and that's in the lightest way. It's being burned, and taken from me. But this is a call to service, because we are in a time where we've had misrepresentation, where we've had people who promise to serve the people when in fact they are serving special interests. They're serving those who have the most money, or those who tell them what to do. And so we need of the people, by the people, and for the people. Again, someone who understands the Constitution matters, that we the people matter, and that there are people who are suffering, and that there are people who may not walk perfectly, who may not do everything right all the time, but that we are human beings. Redemption is real, love is real, compassion is real, life is real.
Right.
And so I am here to represent all those who have fallen and are looking for a new direction, those who are struggling, those whose voices have not been heard. And then the other side of this, someone who has a mindset of solutions with actions, someone who will bring true skills, knowledge, and abilities to the office. So I am applying for a job, and you and your listeners are my interview panel, and I'm going to work, not going to hold an office for a party or for a group of special interests, but to serve we the people, because that's who I work for. And the Constitution of the United States and Washington State is the foundation of my governance.
That's awesome. Now, your political history.
Yeah.
I know you were a school board director in Richland School District prior to that. Were you involved in politics, like as
Not
an
at all.
elected official? Okay.
No, not at all.
Um, so can we talk a little bit about your time as a school board director? When were you elected?
Gosh, I want to say 2022. I think I have my certificate close by, but it's been a couple of
So
years.
during COVID.
Yeah, it was during COVID, so it may have even been 2021. It's all a blur, and
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
honest, yeah, today has been quite a day, and so yeah, everything's kind of a blur. And I don't mind admitting that it's been a very busy day, somewhat of a stressful day. So
Well, and that's why we were a few minutes late getting started.
yes,
I'm like, "Sammy, is your phone blowing up? We gotta go live here."
oh, it was blowing up, you guys, and thank you for your grace. I really do
Of
enjoy and
course.
your listeners being patient, but no, it's been a probably 2.5 years, and that was again a response, more of a response than a calling, but it was a response to the mandates and shutting down our
Right,
schools.
right.
And my daughter coming home as a seventh grader with a laptop, and I'm like, I know you're not going to learn off of a laptop. Children need to be in a classroom with a teacher and having that social engagement and learning the fundamentals. And that's not what they were doing with this shutdown. So
Right.
I responded instead of just with my words or yelling at a screen by putting myself out there and saying, if I'm going to complain about it, then I need to do something about it. And that's much to do about our run for governor.
Yeah. And well, and that's what, is what started Conservative Ladies of Washington, really, is just that, there I was seeing all this stuff going on. And then, as what happened with our daughter in 2021 really compelled me into legislation. But I remember, not you specifically, but I remember hearing about this Richland school board that was going against the mask mandates. And in 2020, when schools shut down, I had been married for 8 months. We had a blended family. We had a seventh grader, eighth grader, ninth grader, 10th grader. And they all came home from school on March 4th. We were in North Shore School District, the first school district in the country to shut down for COVID, and one of the last to go back. It was really difficult for our four teenagers, just like it was almost every other kid. And I remember hearing what was going on in Richland and being really grateful that there was a school board that was courageous enough to stand up against these mandates. And I know that there was then a recall because, you couldn't go against the law.
Yeah.
And that is like, that's a whole other discussion, because there is law that allows the governor to have these unconstitutional emergency powers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is it against the law? Well, the law is unconstitutional. So there's that.
Yeah. If I could, I'd like to speak to that. So
Yeah,
that was me. Again, little scatterbrained today with dates and
that's
times,
okay.
but no, that was me. That was us. We, my team, and I say that two powerful ladies. I made the motion to give parents that choice. So it was us. I was on the school board. I was a legislative representative, and I made the motion to give choice to parents because we had students. We had the highest suicide rate. We had lost learning. And I went to the health director of Benton County and myself, the superintendent of our school district, another opposing school board director, and that health director and her assistant. We were on a Zoom call. And I asked those questions. I asked her, would this impose or bring a threat about for our community? And she said, no, we must consider the mental health crisis that we're in.
Yep.
And anxiety leads to depression. And we had the highest suicide rate, as they said. We had a loss learning issue as well as a mental health issue. And when I made that motion that night at the school board, I said, this is not for politics or pandering or any other reason except for the lives and the welfare of our children. And I meant it. And we made the motion. And I even gave grace to our superintendent, saying that the decision that will be made tonight, whether pro or con parents' rights, let's not blame our superintendent. And I will give love to any school board director who does not align with my request. And that is how I think. And that is how I am as a person, giving grace and respect. But we passed it. And then they still shut down the schools, saying that the teachers union called and said that we will not show up. And that's the politics.
Yeah.
That the teachers union has that much power, and that they would defund our schools when they have a paramount responsibility to teach our children. So the politics and the power and the pundits and the special interest instead of the welfare and the education of our children. It's amazing how power and wealth control our state.
Absolutely. And I don't know how, I think people are starting to get it. I know for me, being involved in the state legislature and actually seeing the teachers union in action and seeing them influence state legislation and policies and laws that impact our children. Um, I don't really know if people understand just how powerful the teachers union is. And maybe you can talk a little bit about, because one of the things that people have said to me, well, he was recalled as a school
Yeah.
board director. And
Yes.
and for me, I'm like, if you were recalled for going against mask mandates, wonderful. I mean, that is a great reason to be recalled. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about what that recall effort was like in Richland that maybe people don't know about, because I think that you've got this group of people that just don't understand how powerful that teachers union is, how much money they have, how much influence they have. So
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about that?
Happy to. And so it wasn't just about the mask. I think that was the final straw for them. But my first motion that I made as a school board director, I literally, before walking up to the dais and taking a seat, I raised my hand and then walked up, sat down, and made a motion to form a committee of parents to give parents a voice and a choice of their over their children's education. And that was the beginning. And then I brought forward another motion for a policy that said we will teach civics, not critical race theory, in our schools. And so
Mhm.
we continue to bring these motions and these policies because you cannot enforce a resolution, but you sure as heck can enforce a policy. And so whether you're a member of the union or not, unions are not excusable to policy violations. And so they realized quick that we were no longer going to tolerate compromising our children's education or the rights of parents under our board leadership. And
Yeah.
so the power of the union was simply this: during this recall, when they tried to sue us, and they had threatened me to do this before, they had threatened to attack me and slander me, much like we're seeing right now in this governor's race. Those threats were put out there before I even made these motions or took these actions. But again, I'm not there to serve special interest. I'm there to serve our community. And so they brought their money and they came out with the ads and they had the strength of the media and they took them out in all languages and they brought these motions, or not motions, but these sign up sheets that they weren't supposed to do, but they brought them in the schools to the teachers. And then they had them out there with parents trying to get people to sign the signatures to do the recall. And they did every dirty trick that they could. And all the ads they took out in the paper and then on TV, they brought a lot of money. And keep in mind that this recall took place during an off year primary. And it's not county-wide, it was school district, which our school district, even in a conservative county, our school district is half or more than half liberal. And so parents don't get involved enough in school district or school board meetings and
Right.
actions. And so many families were on vacation when all this happened. So a lot of people fought, but because people aren't engaged enough with the teachers union power and money, that is all it took to push 3 conservative school board directors out of their positions. And I was one of them. Keep in mind, I was not running for reelection, and my term had expired within 60 days of that recall. They did this just to make a point. The other school board director, she was running for reelection within 60 days of the recall, or 90 days, more or less. So there was a lot more to this.
Yeah, and you make a good point about, people not showing up, parents, citizens, taxpayers not showing up, and engaging in this process. And we've seen that in our work in the state legislature as well. I mean, there's just such an absence of the citizen voice, and that's why a lot of these big unions, and special interest groups and lobbyists and it's the who has the most money,
Yes,
right? And that's why that is happening. And I really feel like the citizen voice is so powerful. It's more powerful than money,
it
but if you're
is.
not showing up and you're not using your voice, no power, right?
Julie, that's it. And it's at those school board meetings. when we would make decisions and we would get all these emails, I mean, a lot of hate emails. And
Sure.
it's interesting. You would think adults don't behave this way, but you should see some of the emails we used to get. And people would show up at these school board meetings knowing that we were going to make a decision. And they would show up to intimidate, and they would show up
Mhm.
in numbers. But parents who care so much about their children, even in a community where you can say, well, we would have a majority vote, they weren't showing up. But the LGBTQAI plus
Yep.
advocates, not even parents, many of them, but some of them would show up in mass to make sure that they would get their way and
Yep.
intimidate the handful of parents who would show up to try to protect their children from comprehensive education or LGBTQAI plus history. And I mean, all these other things except the fundamentals of education. It's
Yeah.
amazing. If you show up, you get your way. That's their way of thinking.
Yeah, and there's like we could have a whole, hour talking about citizen engagement and people showing
Yes.
up and what you need to do, but you're absolutely right. It's the people that show up, and these groups show up in huge numbers, and oftentimes they don't have kids in the schools. They're not parents of students in the schools, but because they show up and because they're the loud voices, you're at t-ball or soccer or whatever with your kid and you're not at that school board meeting. Someone else is calling the shots.
That's it.
And so I wanted to make sure that we discuss this because, I know it gets thrown around a lot that, oh, Semi Bird lost a school board recall, but I think it's important for people to understand exactly what that was all about and how that game is played.
I
Because
appreciate it.
honestly, like I said, somebody losing a recall over that, I would support that all day long. And as a mom of four that were in North Shore School District, we had all the mandates and testing, and it was horrible for the kids. And I know a lot of parents, regardless of their political affiliation, didn't want their kids to be masked or have to be vaccinated or have tests every week. So I thank you for that. I thank you for and the other school board members for having the courage to stand up for our children.
That's
um,
what's needed right now. It
it
really
really
is.
is.
It's a courage to take a stand, to do what you believe is the right thing to do, even in the presence of attack. And I won't beat that horse to death, but for such a time as this,
Yeah.
we're at the precipice in our society and in our communities, and we need people to represent people. And that's
Yeah.
it. Real people,
Yeah.
grassroots.
Totally. Well, I know that let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we?
Yeah. Yeah,
I,
please.
I know I can tell it's weighing on you, and I want to let you share your piece. So, and I've seen some people in the chat asking about it, but there is an article by Jason Rance. I'll go ahead and put it in the chat so people who haven't read it can they'll have the link there. But this so the article says. Semi Bird reprimanded for fraud against U.S. Army after stolen valor claims. This article is based on anonymous sources. Um, I just got this like an hour ago, so I haven't had a chance to really read it in depth. So, but I do want to give you a chance to say your side of it.
Yeah.
And from what it looks like to me, it's something from 2009. It was resolved.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
It's yeah. Things like this, Julian. Thank you. It's never enough. It won't be resolved. It's never enough. I'm in the way. But this isn't the first time. Remember, they went back 40 years to to me punching a sergeant because he decided that I was the N word and not a Marine, and then putting hands on me. So, you know, was I wrong to request trial by court instead of letting them bury the fact that someone is free and loose with the N word? It was 1984. Well, I don't think I was. Was it a dumb thing to do? Maybe. But no, someone's got to take a stand for what they believe is right and wrong. If a sergeant calls a Marine the N word and grabs him around the throat right now and I think it would be the opposite. I'd probably get promoted and that person would be kicked out of the Marine Corps. But I did finish my tour, got my honorable discharge and a good conduct medal. My point being is now I'm being accused of stolen valor. And so that Bronze Star Valor above my shoulder and then that Purple Heart below it, my wife read the article to me while I was talking to my attorney, because now they're taking a reprimand that happened, a reprimand, not judicial punishment in any way whatsoever, but an administrative action that was located in a restricted file and under Chapter 7 of Army Regulations. I think it's 600-37. So someone should look it up. Chapter 7, Army Regulation 600-37. I was just talking it over with my attorney. It says, in order for a document, a reprimand, to be put in a restricted file, you would have to bring clear evidence that it was untrue or unjust. Not my words, the United States Army Regulation. Well, that document was located in my restricted file. I'm not trying to make an excuse. I'm just giving a fact that anyone can look up. But yet, it was out there. Jason Rance has that document. And he called me on a Memorial Day weekend on a Friday and loads that on me and then proceeds to start talking about stolen valor and says, what if I was to tell you that someone says, you didn't do what you say you did, someone else did? And I'm like, I was there. And then they concoct this story that a major, a special forces major and a sergeant first class somehow went in cahoots to put each other in for an award, when I will send you a document, Julie, not to try to put you in the middle of this, but I want you to see it as my friend. And I don't want to, again, I shouldn't put you in that class because I don't want them attacking you, but I'm not going to lie about my respect and admiration of you. And it'll show a chain of command, all the approval signatures and their comments about me and how they have to approve this. So it's not just a person saying, oh, I'm making stuff up for Semi and Semi's making stuff up. You have to have multiple people, and these are colonels. And then on that reprimand, yes, I took full responsibility and I went thick on taking that responsibility. But then all of these other lieutenant colonels came in and told the general what really happened. And I didn't disclose that. Even when Jason Rance called me, I didn't name any names. He even said in the article, I did not give the name of the accuser, nor did I name the names of the lieutenant colonels who had some responsibility. And again, I'm going to be careful with my words because that's not who I am to blow things up or to throw people out there. I don't go in anonymity. I will be true to who I am. Things will come out now because of what they did. And that is unfortunate. I was on the phone with the Judge Advocate General this morning. We have brought forward our documentation to the office, the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General. There will most likely be an investigation into the state military department because the Judge Advocate General this morning told us no one did a FOIA request. So that document was not brought forward legally. Someone accessed the system illegally and released the document illegally. So how Jason Rance got it, someone should ask him because it wasn't done legally according to the Judge Advocate General. And that'll come out. It's unfortunate because we should be talking about policies and strategies and solutions with actions. But instead, they're saying I'm a fraud, I'm a fake. And now they're going to say, what, am I no longer a Green Beret? Is my military history and all of those medals after 2009. I could read you right now. It would take 30 seconds to read you my meritorious service medal that I received in 2015 or 16 when I retired from the Washington Army National Guard, where it talks about my integrity. It talks about the respect my coworkers had of me as a leader in Special Forces intelligence. All these other leaders from around the world who respected me, my coworkers, those other Green Berets, my commander, one of the most respected colonels in Washington State service, my command sergeant major, the people who were actually with me at the time of this reprimand. So these anonymous people, I wish they would tell their names because the people who were with me they will tell their names and they will bring their statements and they will bring truth to what actually happened. It's unfortunate that this has to, because I would have never said the person who brought the complaint. I would have never done that. But now everything has to come out. Um, and I will try to hold back. But Julie, it's shameful. This is Memorial Day. But what have they done? These are Republicans doing this. This is not even Democrats. We are devolved so much that Republicans are I've been a Republican my whole life. Jason Rance is supposedly a conservative, but he uses his show Brandy Cruz, all of them. I got in the way of Dave Reichert, and so now they will ruin my life, my family, anything that they can. They would rather have me leave the state in ruination than get in the way of their candidate. And they've all been very upfront about their support for Dave Reichert. So I will stop there. But this is not how I do. I don't attack. Yeah. You want to see me do that. I would never name names. I would never do retaliation. I don't call people names. But this is a step too far. You've taken away my past military service. They did. And then they came out with run for lieutenant governor. Do you remember ever seeing that? Save your reputation, they said. Run for lieutenant governor. So I was good enough to run for lieutenant governor, and they would have never done this had I accepted their offer for lieutenant governor. But as soon as I said no, they ruined me. And then what I haven't said was their bribe for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I could name those names, and I have the proof that I will put out. But again, that's not how I roll. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in an account for Simi Bird for lieutenant governor. And then the gentleman who's funding the website, and the gentleman who's putting all these postcards out across the state, who's one of the major donors for Dave Reichert, the major donor for the state party, money and power. They will ruin one person and his family because I'm in their way. And I hope citizens of Washington State wake up to this.
Let me ask you this. So first of all, I want to address one thing about myself and conservative ladies, because there's a lot of talk about Rance and Brandy and Ari Hoffman and some of these other people that have, talk radio shows and go on TV and podcasts and whatnot. I'm just a citizen. Our organization is, it's funded by citizens. We don't have any big donors. I kind of wish we did, but then, with big donors, you have an agenda that typically you have to follow. But we're truly just concerned citizens that are passionate about saving Washington, saving America. As most people know my story, and that really compelled me into the work that I'm doing now, and has made me passionate about alerting other parents and getting people to speak up. And so I don't have sponsors or anything, like no one's paying for this right now. This is just Julie, uncensored, speaking for herself. So I want people to know that. What I want to ask you though, if Reichert is the guy and he's so assured of victory, why is there this huge effort to discredit you, to disparage you, why aren't these efforts being done against Bob Ferguson? Because I can guarantee you, let's just take my parents, for example. My parents live in Snohomish County. They're in their 80s. My mom's a retired teacher, which makes her pretty much a lifetime, Democrat. My dad typically votes Democrat. But they're ready for change. I mean, they see what's happened to their beautiful state, and they're like, this is clearly the Democrats are not doing a good job. So we need something different. And with the work that I do, they want to, they ask my opinion. And so I've shared, a number of different things with them. And they don't understand why Bob Ferguson is such a bad guy. Right. So people that, my parents aren't out to lunch, right? They watch King 5 News every night, and they think they're engaged. And that's what that generation did. They got their news from the TV, and it was, several decades ago, it was pretty fair. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to discredit Bob Ferguson to the average voter who doesn't know what's going on. Why are the efforts not targeted there?
Exactly. That should be the question. And I'll give you the answer. And I don't want anybody to take this wrong. I am part of what America stands for. The kid from the inner city, the kid from a single mom, the kid that grew up poor, the kid that dropped out of high school. But here I am. You cannot achieve what I've achieved. And I'm not something special. I never was, never will be. I'm a servant. I'm a servant. And I serve something much higher and much greater than anything on this earth. Called, blessed. I'm a threat. I'm a threat because the kid from the ghetto, that kid born without civil rights, I've broken every record. The left says critical race theory. The left says you're a poor black man. The white man is against you. The Republicans hate you. And here I am, a Republican, a successful person. I was successful in the military until an hour ago. Are you hearing me? I had a, I was a, I was said, as a hometown hero until an hour ago. So far, I still have an honorable discharge. I still have other medals. I mean, you cannot take certain things away. And the only thing that you cannot take away from me is the love of my wife and my children. You cannot take away my faith. And that is something why they cannot break me. And so they were threatened because I am bringing more people, everyday people, Democrat, independent, people like me. And what I mean by that is people who have made mistakes, people who grew up poor, people who are, whether you're a Democrat, I've been a Republican my entire life. But I will tell you this, I represent everyday people, and that scares people of power. And you're right. Why would they come after me if we cannot win? If we received 72%, a supermajority at the state party convention, and then they blew that off. And then Dave Reicher didn't show up. And then he went on the news and he said, the GOP leaders promised me that Semi Bird would be disqualified. How did that happen? I can tell you why, and this will come out pretty soon, because they partnered with the candidate committee to have me disqualified, but it didn't work out because the delegates, which I didn't know, had a different thing in mind. They wanted someone to represent them, and I guess it was me. Well, it was. And so they're going to be shocked again in the primary, and they knew it was going to happen. They knew we were going to win in the primary, just like in 2020 when Colt beat Freed. And they said he had all the money, he had all the power behind them. Again, they're threatened by us, we the people's movement, except I'm a different candidate than we had in 2020. I represent something different, that real diversity. Could you imagine Bob Ferguson running against me? How is he going to explain that away? So we present a threat, and they had to go very low. On Memorial Day weekend, they had to take a decorated veteran and accuse him of stolen valor and bring these anonymous tattletales or telltellers and then somehow release restricted documents illegally into a conservative talk show host who put it out to everybody, and boom, there it is. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not quitting. You're not going to shame me away. The teachers union couldn't scare me away. And I'm going to keep fighting because I am protected by the highest. That is something that no man, no one can take from me. I do not serve according to the flesh of man. Let that be known. I'm sorry. You and your story and your organization represents everything that I stand for. There's nothing special here except someone who loves his country, who loves his community, who loves his family. And for such a time as this 414, here we stand. Amen. And here we fight to the end.
Yep. And I told you this when I saw you at the Lincoln Day dinner last weekend. And I was just, my husband and I have talked about it a number of times. Not specifically the Washington GOP, candidate endorsement guidelines, but I would not be able to be endorsed by YGOP. And because everybody's going to like go try to figure out why, I'm just going to tell them to like, spoiler alert, I filed for bankruptcy in 2014. I was a single mom, 4 kids. I was going through court stuff to protect my kids from they had been abused. I was on food stamps. I had credit card debt from when I was married, and I couldn't, I needed to get the calls to stop, and filing bankruptcy was a way to do that. And if you have filed for bankruptcy and within 15 years, you cannot be endorsed by YGOP, which I think is a shame, because I think I would be a great candidate, but I also know that Republicans in Washington would not, they would not let me win. They would make sure that I did not win. But you probably know that Todd Herman and I are dear friends. He is the one who first covered my story when everything happened with my daughter. And we since then have become very good friends. And I listened to the interview that he did with you. And Todd brought up a number of good points. But one of them is, we see the mainstream media, King and Como and all these mainstream people, outlets, they're covering Ferguson and Reichert. They do not want to show the face of the first Black Republican governor candidate. They don't.
No.
Because you might get some votes.
Yes. Let me say this real quick. 2 hours before, well, it's been longer. Time has flown today because obviously everything happening. It was 2:45 today. I was on the phone with the founder of Democrats for Diversity and Inclusion, still lives in the Central District. He is part of our team. One of the leaders of the Somali community, basically represent Eritrea, Kenya, Eastern African American community. We are working together. So that's happening. And this is Seattle. So folks need to hear this and understand this. We are on the phone today, strategizing, planning our ground game. This is what we have managed to do. We have been endorsed by the LUCA, Latino organization that supports us, Kappa, Chinese American patriots who support us. We are bringing so many folks together because it's not a matter of party. It's not a matter of those elitists, those oligarchs of politics that have been manipulating elections on us. You are right. The media, conservative and Democrat alike, if you go on and you say Reichert and Ferguson enough, and that's all people know, and then you do your little polls with your special sampling of 400 people that represents all of us across the state, you're going to get the numbers you get. And then you put those polls out, bought and paid for. You are manipulating election outcomes, and it's still not going to work. Just like in 2016 at the national, it didn't work then. It's not going to work in 2024 for Washington state governor's race. So they had to stolen valor and then leak a document that was illegally gained. They have to do this. They have to assassinate me and lynch me publicly. They have to do this, but I'm not going anywhere. And my beautiful wife and my children, my middle daughter serves in the National Guard. And she is seeing this. She is seeing her father, a grown woman, seeing her father, and she serves. My oldest daughter with my 2 grandchildren, they are seeing their father. And they say they called me a deadbeat dad, that I abandoned my children who love me. And my daughter said, when I was talking, and I said this in my podcast, she says, Dad, don't share the tears yet. We'll all be crying when you're in the steps of the Capitol being sworn in, or there by your side. You tell your supporters that when they call you a deadbeat dad and they see the love we have for you. Those are my babies, and I'm not going to cry right now as I'm talking about them, because you know how close I am to my family, and you see the love that we have.
Yeah.
This is God's blessing for us. And I tell you what, my friend, I'm sorry for talking so long, Julie, but it's not just us. Communities, African communities, Hispanic communities, Chinese American, all communities care about the innocence of their children. They see what's happening to our society. They see it, and they're with us. and they just need someone who's unafraid to go to them and bring the message. And we've been doing this for over a year, and that scares the you know what out of the powerful, the elitist. And it doesn't matter how many shows they have, because if we stand together, that is the worst threat to the establishment. And so now I ask people to be courageous, as you said at the beginning of this show. We must be
Yeah.
courageous and stand for our beliefs. And those are everyone's beliefs: protecting our children, protecting our constitutional rights, and understanding that one flag represents all citizens. Where's it at? There it is. It represents all of us. And so, no, we're not going anywhere, Julie. They're not going to scare me away. And we will do whatever it takes, ethically, morally, to stand true. I'll be here.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be that way. If you are passionate about the fight, which I know that you are, or you wouldn't have signed up to do this and to
Yeah.
put yourself out there like that. Um, you have to be willing to, take these, like, it's a spiritual battle. I know you're a man of God, and this is a spiritual battle. But we know how the story ends, right? We've read the book. We know that
Mm-hmm.
light always wins and victory is mine, saith the Lord. And, while we may not see it on this side of heaven, um, I get that you want to be, when you meet Jesus, you want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant.
Yes.
And so I want to I want to ask about, you mentioned something that kind of triggered this thought, and somebody asked me to ask you about this tonight. Um, I tried to find it. I tried to search for it and find it, but I couldn't. So I know you'll know what I'm talking about, and probably most people watching. There was a DEI training that involved Patty Murray. I want to say it was like around 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And so people want, well, what's his view on DEI? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and thank you for the question. So again, more spin, and I'm just going to say it lies. I'd like to sugarcoat that and say half truth. This is just a straight up lie. And so and I'm going to send this to you too. So you have to make sure I remind you of this.
Yeah.
So on my website, so my company, Team Concepts, I've been a business consultant, and so there's real experience consulting companies to be better performing companies. So I taught or I lectured, and here's the name of the course. It's ingrained in my memory: diversity and inclusion. Notice the E word missing. There's no equity in that. So is there anything wrong with diversity? Well, that's America. And inclusion, what's the good of valuing different cultures if you don't include them, right? It's called America. So the name of the course was Diversity and Inclusion, aka the two dots, Generations, Cultures, and Perspectives. The title is still on the website, and no equity was ever mentioned. And in fact, the course taught the opposite. Why generations, cultures, and perspectives? Because in the course, which I also have recorded, and I will reduce that so people can see it, truth shall set you free.
That's
And
right.
so I taught the opposite. Oh, it's true. And by the way, the same guy who made national news for bringing a policy, again, in the school district that says we don't teach critical race theory, which is the foundation of DEI. So never taught it. In corporate America, you have back then millennials coming in and saying, where's my corner office? Where's my parking place? And the baby boomers, my generation, goes, you young entitled punks. No. And then you have this. So they weren't communicating. It was this. And so I taught interpersonal engagement and communications between different generations, different cultures, so we could work together. And there was that diversity, communicating, including, working together, and valuing different perspectives, become more efficient, more effective. It was interpersonal engagement. And here's the good thing. That was taught to all major Hanford contractors. The president, I'm going to bust him out, but he's a dear friend. He's Gabe Galbraith, Kennewick School Board president. And you probably know Gabe, one of my students. So you're going to have to ask Gabe. I'm busted. Gabe, I love you. Gabe was one of my students at WSU where this course was taught. Patty Murray, we listed her on our website as a client because she was, oh, that's right, she still is a state senator. So she sponsored a course or a program for jobs. I lectured on jobs. She did her program at Washington State University, where I was employed. My office was upstairs. I was doing a lecture on jobs. And so, hence, I did a lecture that day on a pipeline. And so I
Okay.
listed her as a client. It had nothing to do with my course that I was just talking about, diversity inclusion. No, it had nothing to do with that. But we listed her as a client because I did a lecture on jobs, a pipeline from middle school through high school to jobs, trades. It was focused on trades, which is one of my policies as governor candidate. We need more trades. And
Yes.
that was my lecture, which is all verifiable. I have an email that I have to send you, which I was telling you about, from Patty Murray's office saying, please take our name off your website. She was not a client of yours, which is true. Technically, we were just the lecturer at her event. And so I did. So I got to send you that
Gotcha.
email. So again, truth comes out. I didn't put it out there, but these were the Reichert supporters and those individuals using semi-taught DEI when all these years I've been teaching against critical race theory. So how does it make sense that I would, it's all lies. So there's that
Well,
for
and
everybody.
anything can be taken out of context, and if with something like that, especially if they, it's easy to spin things, right? If
Yes.
you want to spin it, you'll find a way to spin it. And I'm going to add this, not so much for you, but for our audience that's listening, because I watch an awful lot of TVW when the legislature is in session. I was watching a floor debate this session, 2024 session, and heard one of the top Republicans in the House say in a speech on the House floor, I like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
why is it okay for him and not you? I
Yeah.
mean,
So
that's what I think. And I think we're so hypocritical. And so I just want people to know that these are things that are, I'm not defending, it on like I just like what is the standard? Do we like DEI or not? Because if we
yeah,
don't like
no.
DEI, then we can't like it for anyone.
Yeah. So Senate Bill 5044 is that DEI policy, which I
Yeah.
spoke out from day one. It's wrong. And I spoke out about it. I mean, I pulled my daughter out of public school, and there was a reason for that because those teachers and the teachers union came after me at the very beginning. That's when I pulled her out because they came after me. And why? Because I spoke out against DEI and
Yeah.
CRT. And the one major one, it's all very public. The people who live here, they know that truth. They came after me because they said, how can you be a black man and be against DEI and CRT? And he was going to be her teacher. And I pulled her out quick and in a hurry after getting into it with the principal because he was going to take that teacher's position. I said, no, that was the bridge that went too far. So truth is truth. And I'm going to speak it. And there comes a time where, like I said, with what's happening today, unfortunately, names will have to be named. And I try
Yeah.
not to do that because you don't bring darkness to darkness. As you said, you bring light. You don't bring hate to hate, you bring love. That is how I am at my core. But truth is truth, and truth is love. So I'm going to share some love and some truth. People are going to realize when you have that higher protection, you don't run from truth, you bring it. And I'm going to bring it. So I'm glad people asked this question. Y'all deserve to know. And lastly, on that, the lecture I gave that people are showing this video, it was sponsored by the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce. They sponsor a diversity and inclusion, not even a diversity inclusion, it's their diversity summit. They sponsor it every year. I was a lecturer for the diversity summit that year, but they sponsor it every year. And it's sponsored by the Hanford Nuclear Site, by Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. I was an employee of Department of Energy. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying there were a lot of people who go there. I think General Mattis has been there and many others. So it's not that we support DEI, but I do support diversity and inclusion. That's America, all colors, all races, all religions. It's America.
Well, and I think like I would say the conservatives, which it's getting, kind of conservatism is getting interesting now. Like everybody that was a Republican is now calling themselves a conservative. So it's all kind of getting squished together. But I would say most people to the right of center um, are about diversity. We're
We
not
have to.
about like we're about treating each other equal, right? Like
Yes.
you don't have to see like skin color and think like, well, I'm white, so I'm more privileged and you can't do the things that I can because I'm white. And so we got to give you special opportunities so that you can catch up to me.
Yeah.
We don't
Equity is
we don't see
un-American.
things like that.
Yeah. No, equity is un-American, and it goes counter to the Declaration of Independence. And Dr. King fought for and marched for and died for equality of opportunity, not equity of outcome. And that's the thing with equity. That word is very dangerous. And it's unfortunate that it has been stolen and misappropriated, but it's dangerous. It's meritocracy that this nation was based on, working hard for what you want in life. And I said that earlier in our conversation, right? The
Yeah.
kid born without civil rights, the kid from the ghetto, the kid from a single mom who made something of his life. And now look who is trying to take it away from me, not the Democrats, these so called Republicans, mainstreamers, but it's the hypocrisy, like you said. How can they support a senior Republican on in Olympia on the floor, but me, the one and only, the first in state history to ever be nominated by any party, Democrat or Republican, the first Black American ever, where we as the party who freed the slaves, it's almost like full circle. It's like we are the Republican Party, the party of civil rights, the party of women's rights, the party that ended slavery. Would we not be proud of this? And I am not a product of equity. I'm a product of meritocracy. I earned my way. It was the vote of the people who nominated me and endorsed me because I have been campaigning hard 7 days a week for over a year, earning the vote, not giving it to me because of the color of my skin or it made news. I earned it through hard work and 7 days a week. So no one is going to take that from us, we the people. It was earned, not equity,
Well,
equality of opportunity.
and I want to say something to that PCO, the delegate vote that happened in Spokane last month. Because when I first started CLW, which was like early 2020, and 2021, as we start, we had a number, thousands of women in our group, and so people started coming out of the woodwork asking me to help, recruit PCOs. And I didn't really know that much about the Republican Party, but it sounded like a good idea. So I did that, and we promoted it and did a lot of videos encouraging ladies to sign up and become PCOs. And we told them, this is how you get to have your voice.
Mhm.
And, it was really cool because they went to Spokane to speak their voice, and they did. And then said, well, we wanted you to speak your voice, but not like that.
Yes, that
And
is.
I was so sad for all these people that had gone to Spokane. They'd spent their time, their money, so many of them had driven such a long distance
Yes.
to be there. And then they got called, right-wing extremists. And, I just like, it just makes me sad, right? I just like, that's not what anyone expected. That's not how it's supposed to be. And how is it a big tent if we're going to do that?
We say this thing. Oh, Julie, thank you so much for calling these things out, and we're doing it in a very respectful way. How can we use that phrase "big tent"? And we're kicking our own people out of the tent. We're
Right.
saying we're a big tent, and we want all these other people to come in our tent. But what it really is, it's like you can call yourself a Republican, but as soon as that shoe doesn't fit, well, then you're out. And if you're a conservative, we don't even know what that means. I literally have said I've been a Republican my whole life, but then I have to stop talking. I mean, am I? I'm a constitutionalist. That really is. I thought I was a Republican my whole life, but as it turns out, I'm really an American. I'm really
Yeah.
I'm America first. I'm Constitution. That's really so. Am I? I don't even know anymore because we're a big tent, but we're kicking our own out, or we're good enough. We're the right Republican when we shut up and we do what the other Republicans say. And what defines a Republican? It's who has the most money, who owns the party, who pays
Right.
for the party, that, and then who pays for the media, who owns the media. It's amazing. We turn It's crazy. You're seeing Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals being used by people who call themselves Republicans. And then they have their own convention in Yakima this last weekend. And then they're bad mouthing the Republicans who had the Republican convention last month in Spokane. And I'm going, so what is the Republican Party? And then they talk about, well, the Republican Party is divided. And here's what I say to that. If you're a constitutionalist and you believe in America, then don't apologize for it. If you believe in protecting the innocence of your children and the rights of parents as the primary stakeholders in their children's upbringing, then don't apologize for that. If you believe in the common sense of safe streets and accountability of government and smaller government, and that government is there to serve the people, and that the people hold the power in a constitutional republic, then don't apologize for that. This is the reality of America, and that America is for all people. Hispanic American, Black American, White American, Asian American, we're all Americans. Don't apologize for that. It's a melting pot. E pluribus unum, out of the many, one, and that one is made up of all different cultures, and together we are a powerhouse. And that is that's what scares the establishment to death. That is the beauty of America. And Julie, that's why I talk about the Constitution and America everywhere and always, because we must now, in the presence of the elite in the media, we must remind people of the beauty of America. And that's why a Somali Muslim was meeting with me, with a Black Democrat was meeting with me, and a white Republican. And we together are bringing change this August. And then in November, we're going to win. I don't, Bob is not the boogeyman. I'm not afraid of him. Dave won't debate me, and that's fine. I don't blame him. I wouldn't either, I guess, if I was Dave. But Bob Ferguson, how are you going to square away being Mr. Equity and Diversity when you're going to be in a debate stage with me? That's not going to work out too well for Bob. Yeah. And Bob does have a record as an attorney general.
Bob won't go on a debate stage with you, I don't think.
Oh, no, it won't happen. But boy, we're going to make it very enticing for him.
We're a little bit over 8 o'clock, and we've been really talking a lot about this breaking piece that came out today. Do you have a few more minutes? Because I'd love to ask you a few more questions.
I'll stay all night with you guys. It's the least I can do. Thank you.
Thank you. So, someone in the chat, Matthew in the chat, is asking a question. He's asked it a number of times, so I'm going to pitch it to you, and maybe spend just a short answer on this and give what you can, and then we'll move on to a couple other questions that I'm burning to ask you. So please ask Semi what he thinks about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. What are his thoughts about Donald Trump recently embracing Bitcoin? Will Semi fight to protect rights to own Bitcoin?
And so there's two things in that. We must never undermine the American dollar because it is our economic strength worldwide. And so that being said, yeah, as long as it does not interfere with the value of the American dollar, it's already under attack right now. And so that would be my response to that. I'm not against Bitcoin. I'm not. But as long as we're not talking about, because there's a global threat to our economy right now, and people need to recognize that. Gold and silver is the base. I mean, it's what we call constitutional money. It's the base of our nation. It is a strength. So no, I'm not against it as long as it does not compromise the strength of the American dollar, and as long as we're not moving away from the American dollar to we have to be careful with that. So I'm being honest, Matt, that it would be the greatest fear. is that we devalue the American dollar, which compromises our international strength economically. That is a danger. And the dollar right now is already under attack. So
For
we
sure.
have to be careful with it. We really do.
Yeah, we're really in a kind of a fragile time. So,
Mhm.
and I imagine that you would consult with probably other
Well,
GOP
yeah.
governors around the country, and different professional, experts on that particular issue.
Well, 100%. But again, I do keep my finger on the pulse of international economics, and I do follow the market every single day. So I could say a lot more on it, but there's a danger of devaluing the dollar,
Yeah,
and that I do know true. But Julie, you're right. Um, we have to look at it not just from a state standpoint or an individual standpoint, but a national standpoint. Our national sovereignty is part of our national economy. And so we have to
right.
keep that into consideration. And my finger is on the pulse of that. But I will always consult a true economist. Always. I don't make a decision in the bubble unless it's an emergency. So,
Yeah. So let's talk about emergencies. Um, so obviously we all know about what happened with COVID, and Inslee had emergency powers for almost 1,000 days.
mhm,
There were some efforts during the last couple of legislative sessions to do some emergency powers reform. Uh, Conservative Ladies of Washington didn't really like any of those proposals. And the reason for that is they were unconstitutional.
mhm,
They still allowed the governor to have authority that was unconstitutional, stopping the flow of free people from going outside. You can't go to a park, you can't go to church. It allowed the governor to still have some of those powers. What are your and if you haven't, we can, if you haven't thought about this, we can skip it, but I would
no, no, no,
imagine that
no.
you've thought about some of it. Um,
Yeah.
we do need, even with a GOP governor, the emergency powers do need to be reformed. We can't let that happen again. So what are your thoughts on that and what that would look like?
Yeah. And hold me accountable. I don't have all the answers. I tell people openly I don't do math problems, but I try to stay astute to, well, this is an application, right? And so,
Mhm.
no, let's do it. You may be talking about 43.06.220, correct? Well, that's okay if you're not.
I know
It's
bill numbers, not so much RCWs.
no, it's okay. But that is the RCW on emergency powers, and that's primarily the RCW that Jay Inslee used for his abuse of emergency powers.
Mhm.
And in particular, you meant restricting activity. So now we're talking about, I think it's like paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, which is, I believe, paragraph 1 suspended activity, whereas paragraph 2 suspended statutory change. And
Mhm.
so his powers were supposed to be no more than 30 days. But then, in order to exceed that, he had to get the sign off of legislature. And so, as we're talking, I'm hoping your viewers are actually Googling me to, and it's okay because I don't know everything and I'm not looking at any computers because my computer's over here and this is just my little screen thing for my laptop. But I do try to know what I need to know because I'm applying for a job, as I
Right.
said earlier. So, no, I'm familiar. And then I'm familiar with 43.06.10 subsection 12. He abused his power under that 220 and suspending activities, and then they use it and they call them mandates. Mandates are unconstitutional. Mandates are not a law. But as soon as we gave him, we suspended 1 and 2, and they signed away our powers as citizens. You know, Article 1, Section 1 of the Washington State Constitution, that power is inherent in the people. And government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed, that second paragraph. And it's government's job to protect and to maintain the individual rights of our citizens. It's that Section 1 that by suspending 1 and 2 of that 220, right? That's where the violation comes from. Our legislature should have never signed that away because that was in violation of Section 1 of Article 1. And I hope I'm making sense. And maybe
You
I
are
make
to me because I like eat, sleep, and breathe legislation, but people in the
good.
chat might be getting, people that are watching might be getting lost. But so, what people need to understand is the law itself is unconstitutional.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, Washington state legislature passes a lot of unconstitutional laws.
Yes. Yeah.
And as in order to stop those, they have to be challenged in court, which takes a lot of money and time and most, in the last biennium, there were over 2,000 bills dropped. I forget the number that was passed. Leslie's in the chat. She might know. But there are hundreds of new bills passed every year. That's a
Mhm.
lot. Like, that's a
Oh,
lot of new laws for citizens to be living under.
they can't. This last session, I think it was like our short session, 60 days. It was approximately 384 bills that were
Yes,
brought
that were
forward in
passed.
60, right? And
Yeah,
who can keep track of that when you have a 9 to 5 job or whatever your shift is, and then you come home and you have children, and then it's
right.
homework, and then quality time for maybe a couple seconds with the family, and maybe a 0.5 seconds with the wife, or the husband. I mean, it's not our
You can't.
job.
Yeah,
We can't. And for the value immense of conservative ladies of Washington in America, if not for you sending us these emails all the time, letting us know, and then doing these sessions to keep us posted. Because I'm a member, I'm a recipient, and so I get these heads ups. Hey, check out this, because if you're not, otherwise, and that's one of the things I've said as governor, I'm going to do my own thing. I'll be doing a podcast like I do right now, letting people know I will be proposing legislation, and I will be sending it out to the people first. And before I pass anything or approve of anything, I want to make sure that the citizens see it, because they're doing things that regular people don't know what the heck's going on,
right.
like 5599. That wouldn't have passed at all. Climate Commitment Act. Police
So let me
pursuit.
ask you this.
Yeah.
As governor, as a GOP governor, let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, that the legislature stays the same as it was this year, right? So you've got a Democrat majority in the House and the Senate. They can still pass everything they want. How does that work? Like, you can't veto everything. So how does that, I mean,
I can, unless they have a super majority. And so, no, I,
but they
I,
need to pick up a couple seats, I think, right?
yeah,
To
they're
have a
going to have to
super
pick up a
majority.
couple more seats before they have a super majority. And so, I will tell you, the Climate Commitment Act wouldn't. Well, let's just go recent. The natural gas bill would have never
Yeah,
passed, because
right.
that's redunculous. But I am going to go back. The assault weapons ban, the mass capacity ban, LGBTQAI plus history ban. They're not. I'm bringing forth an education reform bill that talks about a strategic plan for mandatory for every school district, because they're not effectively and efficiently performing. But we continue to fund them 44% of the budget, and I can give you the statistics, right off the top of my head, right? They're not performing, but we fund them, and they're not valuing parents. Why are we not holding them accountable? But yet they're laying off teachers, and they keep asking for more money. So
Right.
there's things that need to be done. So no, I would not. I would say no to a bad bill. That's why we need to put the right person in office who has a backbone and does not become a puppet of the establishment, because we have an establishment on both sides of the aisle. So no
So
special interest.
totally agree with you on the establishment thing. So let me ask you this about bills, because like there's some that are like egregious, like
Mhm.
they're really bad, and then there's others that are like, well, it's bad, but it's not like gonna end my, it's not the end of the world bad. Do you kind of let some of those like lesser bad ones? Would you kind of let that go through and really kind of focus on the super bad egregious bills like the gas ban and
No, I can't see how a person can. It's an integrity thing, and maybe that's not the right word to use. But how do you say this is wrong? So I'm going to let that go because this is less wrong. Or I'm kidding. I
right,
said that on purpose.
right,
No, I wrong is wrong.
right.
But can I push back and say, tweak this, and maybe we can talk?
Yeah.
No, we will have those discussions. I will have those discussions, but not a compromise in something that. So the Constitution is a big deal for me. So when it's an absolute no if you're
And it
violating
should be.
the
It should be the
yeah.
biggest deal,
So
right?
see it right, and so that's an absolute no on violating the constitutional rights of citizens or violating anything in the Constitution. It's an absolute no go. I don't care how soft or hard it is; it doesn't happen. But if I can help you get it in alignment, then I'll work with you. Absolutely. I
Mhm.
don't care whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Martian. If you feel so passionately about something and it's good for the citizens, I'd like to encourage more Democrats
Yeah.
to align with what's best for Washington. Maybe we can establish a pattern of performance of good bills. I'm all in. Let me help lead. Let me help influence positive change. I don't care which party it comes from. So let me be a leader and help. I will work with anybody. That is true. But I will not compromise the Constitution or the rights of citizens, nor will I let a little bad get passed for a greater bad to stop. No, I think wrong is wrong, and we
Yeah.
can't let
Yeah.
little wrong go through to stop a bigger wrong. Wrong is wrong.
Well, it could potentially be like you could potentially have the opportunity to pull some of the, and there's very few moderate Democrats, but the couple that there are, could potentially be pulled a little bit to the right, and hopefully with a GOP governor, uh, some of the squishy Republicans could be pulled to the right
Yeah,
as well.
Julie, I really do believe that. I think there's all we haven't had real leadership, I believe, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but it's in psychology we call it normative conformity, or in school we call it peer pressure. But there's a positive aspect to that where when you have leadership, and that leadership has a level of control in terms of approving bills, the final approval. If they know that, then they're more likely to work with me,
Mhm.
right? And I'm willing to work with them. So let's work together to make something good for the citizens, and let's bring our citizens into the discussion. So let's work together. If it benefits our citizens, then I'm all in. I mean,
Yeah.
if it improves our economy so people can afford to live here and stay here, I'm all in. Lowering taxes, I'm all in. Making our schools better, sign me up. Valuing the rights of parents and other citizens and honoring our US Constitution, sign me up. So I just think there's a lack of transparency with our citizens. And if we brought more citizens to the table that was convenient for them, I think they would be with us.
Yeah.
But once we start doing good governance and making good changes for Washington, that'll wake citizens up. I'm all for self governance. I'm a big fan of that phrase, self governance. And they're going to hear
Mhm.
that out of me probably every day, all day. I'm a big fan. So I'm going to be the self governance governor, getting more citizens involved in their government, and they'll have fun doing it because we're going to make some beautiful change.
Yeah, I think that's so I love just kind of the positive sound of that, because what I feel about Washington citizens is there's a lot of fear
Yes.
on both sides, and I think that that fear is one of the issues that's driving a lot of the contention in this governor's race on both
Yes.
sides,
Yes.
because people are so desperate to I think people see this particular race as very pivotal for Washington State, as kind of this is our point of no return,
Yes.
and and I do agree with that. I think a Ferguson governor is destroying would destroy Washington State,
Yeah.
and I think the people know that too, and so there's that fear, and people just across the state, regardless of their political beliefs or if they even have political beliefs, they're struggling. They know that their kids aren't okay. They know that they can't afford to buy a house. There's so many different problems for Washington citizens that people are just looking for hope, for a shred of hope, and you know, it's important not to for people not to have a savior complex, right? Of,
Mhm.
oh, Semi or Dave Reichert or whoever, the say Trump or whoever it is,
Yeah.
you can't put them up on a pedestal because you're just human, right?
100%. And I tell people all the time, because that would be, I don't want to say offensive to me, but it goes against everything I believe in. And you understand that
Yeah.
probably without me going into detail. I'm a vessel of change, and nothing more. And I say this all the time. I'm no better than anybody, and I really mean that. It's of the people, and I am so much of the people. And so it's important for people to understand. I'm not here to sell fear or push fear. I'm here to inspire hope. Because when you say, well, Bob Ferguson is the boogeyman, anything but Bob, anything, but no, not anything but Bob. It's something better than Bob, is what we should be
Right,
talking
right.
about. Don't excuse away one bad politician for another bad politician. Self-govern and bring hope and vote for a better policy. Vote for a better solution. Vote for a better platform. I'm just the vessel bringing it.
Mhm.
I'm a communicator. I'm a messenger of a message. That is all I represent. That's what I want people to see me as. And that is anything special or better, but a messenger of maybe a better message, a better platform. But when I say self governance, I want everybody to understand this. I am that messenger of a platform, but we are doing this together. We won that convention. And when I say we, it was mostly them. I'm one vote. And I was a delegate because I am a PCO, right? And I
Right.
have been in my community. I have been knocking on doors. I have been canvassing. So I didn't just show up because big money and big wealth brought me to the forefront and said, here's your guy, like they always do. I'm one of y'all, right?
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who actually went to board meetings and actually got on them and actually fought to say at this at the the general assembly meeting that parents are the primary stakeholders. I was the guy who used Robert's Rules of Order during that meeting to vote against the WASDA vote that said no, parents aren't the primary stakeholders. I was the guy who got Robert's rule. I'm not trying to be braggadocious. I don't want that didn't come out right, but someone's got to take a stand, and I'm
Right.
unafraid.
Right.
And so no, we have to. We the people. This is us. This is our time. And don't be afraid. Don't let them sell fear. Today was an example of I'm the boogeyman. Now I just stole valor. Before they said I stole from my dad, right? The man who made me the executive of his estate, the man who said, I'm proud of you, son, to the whole family on his deathbed. You know, they give you this half truth and make me out as, you see what they're doing. They went back 40 years to shame my previous military. They have to, Mr. Misdemeanor, right? And so now I'm this hardened criminal. They have to sell fear. It's if not fear for Bob Ferguson, fear of Semi Bird, fear. Right? Why are they not talking about the greatness of their candidate? Why are they not talking about the greatness of their candidate's position or platform or solutions? They're trying to excuse their candidate by anybody but Bob, and here he is. And Semi Bird's a scary boogeyman, bad man. It's you see this, and I think people are waking up. So their little recent trick is not going to work because people want solutions. We're going to continue to bring hope, but I don't want to keep talking. I want to answer more questions if we can.
No, I think that that is great. And one of the things that I have seen in the last few months and really, as you know, I've tried to kind of keep out of this race as much as possible because there is so much mudslinging going back and forth. And I just don't think it's, I understand sort of that fear element and people just want to save Washington. And I think supporters on both sides, and I'm talking, when I say supporters, I mean just your average ordinary citizens, right?
Mhm.
Not talking about media people or anything like that. Just the average, we the people. I think they both genuinely believe in their candidate and feel strongly about their candidate, and there's fear. But one of the things I've heard, particularly from people who are supporting you, and I've heard it a number of times, that they're new to politics.
Mhm.
Even one of the gals in our organization, I saw her on here earlier, is in Ballard, and deep blue Ballard, and she's said, I signed up to be a PCO, and I'm supporting Semi, and she's never really been involved in it, but she sees what's going on, especially in Seattle, and is getting involved, and so it's neat to see this kind of energy that's bringing new people, because that's what we need. Is we need new people, and I said this earlier in a Twitter space that you can spend all this energy arguing with someone who's in the other candidate's camp, right? You're never going to win that person. So stop wasting your energy and go out, and in the time that you're doing that, you could talk to 10 voters who know nothing about Semi Bird or Dave Reichert or Bob Ferguson. You could win 10 votes in the time that you're wasting energy with someone you're not going to win. Move
100%.
on.
Oh no, you're 100%. I was yesterday. I was in Everett, and then the day before I was in King County. I think it was in Bellevue. So I had to come home. I got to spend my family time, and so I literally ping pong just within 48 hours. But all day long yesterday, Cruise and Colby, great event. It's car show and the street vendors everywhere, and across. It was a black vendor, a black family, two young sons ran over and said, "Sammy Bird, that's you," and they were so excited. Two young men, and then they said it brought me over to meet their dad, this older gentleman. This is just what you said, and so many people going back and forth nonstop for hours. And another gentleman, I have to say this real quick. A gentleman walked up to me and says, "What grade school did you go to?" And he waited for so long, and I felt so bad because that person was wanting to talk. And then I told him, and he gave me his name, and we went to grade school together.
Oh,
Grade
wow.
school. And then the gentleman who was talking to was his butcher, 20 years as a butcher, not a Republican. He's going to vote for me. And he knew my grade school. It was just fellowship. Someone who knew me from grade school, a gentleman who never votes Republican, who's voting for, it was just the fellowship. And all day long, people who don't vote Republican, we're voting for you. We're voting for you. And I'm so honored. Our convention, record number of delegates, more than any amount of delegates in Republican Party history. So I am honored, again, self-governance, getting more people involved. It's not about the party pundits and in this bubble talking about each other, bad-mouthing each other. And I tell my folks and my supporters and anybody, stop calling names, stop using the rhino thing, stop trying to, if you want to articulate a position, articulate the position, but don't call names to do it. You do me a disservice, and you don't represent me when you do that. Let's get out and spread the word. Yeah. And you are 100% right. So we're out there working to get young people engaged and get first-time voters of all ages engaged. And I think we're doing a great job doing it. Self-governance, that's the phrase.
What do you think about getting the church engaged? Because I know there's very few that are doing it. My church in Bothell, Cedar Park Church, they're working on, registering voters, and, they have people engaged in our calls to action when sessions, when the legislature is in session. I think the church is so key. Are you speaking to any churches or anything like that?
Almost every week. And that's how we started our campaign. Inner city, Seattle, Black and brown churches. We have imams. That's who I was on the phone with earlier. So it's not just churches, but yet you're 100%. 500,000 Christians didn't vote in 2020. Right. Over 500,000. Again, and it's not just Christians, Muslims, Sikhs, right. Jews. All denominations. Again, Article 1, Section 11 of the Washington State Constitution, freedom of consciousness, but all religions, people are concerned about what's happening to their children and what's happening in schools and what's happening in our society. All communities are concerned. Young people can't afford to live here. And the growing demographic of poverty now, seniors, 65 years and older. So people are concerned of all. So churches are a powerful group and community. And there's a lot of young people, youth groups in churches. So we've been going to them. We start off with a lot of church endorsements. And so we're still in church almost every week. We're meeting with a new pastor or a new imam
What's an imam?
Imam is it's like a pastor of a church. It's an imam of a mosque.
Okay.
And so it'll be like a rabbi of a temple. And we meet with all denominations because at the end of the day, this is a community effort. And I think it's important for people to understand that's part of the whole American thing, freedom of religion, right? That's how we started off. And so that represents America. I had a lady from Ethiopia say to me, and she's a leader of her community. And this is beautiful. Julie, she said, we've come too far to be free. That is so beautiful. Yeah. And today, that imam said he sent his 2 children back to Somalia because of what's happening in Washington in the schools. He sent them back to Somalia, a
Wow.
war-torn country, because we're truth.
That says a lot about Washington schools.
It says a lot. And why they're laying off so many teachers in Seattle. They cut the gifted programs, and they're asking for more money. No, they lost that money, those FTEs, because parents are pulling their children out of those schools because they no longer have faith or confidence or trust our education system. So again, there's a cause and effect thing. We're here to fix things.
And the in that particular situation with Seattle Public Schools, the school board director told parents if they didn't like it to take their kids out. So they
There
did.
you have it. And now they're seeing it. And
Yep.
then now they think we're going to keep funding it with our taxpayer dollars. Not this governor. And in fact, we're calling for a third-party audit of all state programs and offices on day one, because we're going to track down every penny. We're going to hold every department accountable. Once that audit results come back, we're going to publish them. And then we're going to demand a strategic plan for every department: Department of Transportation, Department of Social and Health Services, OSPI. All of them will have to have a strategic plan with performance indicators, key performance indicators. And that strategic plan for all those departments will be published. Accountability and transparency. So we're doing things differently. It's about performance. And I've got 2 terms because I'm a term limit guy. 2 terms, then I'm out. And so we just have to get in to make the change.
That's awesome. Can I ask you about the Second Amendment? Because that
Yes.
is something that we work a lot on with Bill Kirk of Washington Gun Law. As I'm sure you're well aware, there's been a lot of legislation the last few sessions really trying to do away with the Second Amendment rights of Washington citizens. What are your thoughts on that? What would you be able to do about that as governor?
Yeah, so been tracking Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution. And so we actually have more powers constitutionally than the Second Amendment gives us, just by the wording and how our Constitution is written. And so without getting too much in the weeds, but I like to get in the weeds, because again, I love the Constitution. So the assault weapons ban, the mag capacity ban, and so far people have been going to that lower fruit. We're in the Ninth Circuit, Federal Circuit. Last year, Judge Benavides ruled it unconstitutional, the mag capacity ban in California. But the California Ninths, we're still in the Ninth. It spans through Washington. And so there was the first. And then Silent Majority Foundation took it to court again, Gators Guns. And that Lewis County Superior Court judge ruled it unconstitutional. But then within a short period of time, Ferguson's attorneys took it to the Supreme Court commissioner and got a stay.
80 minutes.
Yeah. For a fraction. So what we have right now is legal precedents over and over again within our region that has defined that as being unconstitutional. And then I will assert Article 6, Paragraph 2 of the United States Constitution, which is the Supremacy Clause, states that any law created outside the United States Constitution that's in countervention of the Constitution is unlawful. That should be it. So we have enough that the governor can bring a suit against these unconstitutional laws so that we can write it up past our Supreme Court to the United States Supreme Court, because the U.S. Supreme Court bounced it back to the Ninth Circuit. Right. And so, there we go.
Right.
I'm going to be championing the return of our constitutional rights. And that's the assault weapons ban, the mag capacity ban. It was done wrong. And it doesn't matter whether I'm a shooter or I'm a guns person. I do support the Second Amendment, and that's because it's constitutional. It's wrong. It needs to be repealed. And I will make sure it gets repealed along with some other laws. And so, but that's it. That's my take on it. I do follow it. I do listen to Bill, what he's been putting out, and good stuff. I watch his videos, good stuff, very educational. And I even watched his last video when he was talking about the lawfulness or unlawfulness of Bob Ferguson's actions recently. So,
I haven't watched that one yet. I'm a little behind.
It's good, but I do. I track the Constitution and the laws and the Supreme Court rulings. Like I said, I'm applying for a job, so you have to be aware of what's going on. For me, it's not me as a person. It's me in the position to advocate for the Constitution and our citizens and protect those rights. And so, again, not to focus on me, but aside from me as the person, it's what the person will do and what they bring to the office to make the changes that need to be changed for our state. So,
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's really important for the citizens is to manage their expectations, right? Is that they don't have this expectation that you're going to go in there and wave a magic wand and undo, decades of bad laws. It's like you're in the Titanic, and you can't just whip a Yui
yeah,
in this, big, huge ship. It's going to take a lot of time, and people really are going to have to be engaged for a long time, past this election. We're in a long game.
100%. And a candidate has to know, again, not only the Constitution, but their left and right limits. A candidate has to know the law and has to know what he or she can and cannot do. And that's important. And then communicate what he or she can and cannot do. I do. I mean, I don't know everything, but I know what I can and cannot do. And so that's why I write solutions or policy and I put it on my website. And I'm a little bit behind because I've been very busy. I'm actually out there meeting people, but I like to write what I'm going to do. I like to communicate. That's why I do a podcast every week. So I'm talking to people and I'm taking their questions live like you're doing. Nothing fake. Clearly, I'm not looking at a screen or a script. Either you know or you don't know. And I'm unafraid to take a question, but you guys can Google it and someone can write back and say, oh, he's wrong, or he's, I should be relatively dialed in or close on what I'm talking about, but nothing fake, but everything real and true. So I will bring the change, but we need to do it together. And it's big picture. It's not overnight, but it's a strategy for action.
I think that is, I like that you have this, we're going to do it together kind of attitude about it. And, just want people to really understand that you, Dave Reichert, Bob Ferguson, any of these people are, you're just human like the rest of us. And that's one of the things that, as I've gotten involved in politics and, talking to elected officials, I realized that, okay, you're just like me. You just got elected to office. You're just human like the rest of us. And so we need to be able to give you that grace that we give to each other, and that there are going to be mistakes along the way. And certain, I'm obviously not talking about corruption when I say mistakes. Corruption's a whole other issue. That's another conversation.
Yeah.
But and just want to, as we kind of wrap up here, I just want to, kind of circle back to how we started. And, we should be about redemption. And, you and I have talked about the prior to this conversation, and just, I think everybody has done things in their past that they would do differently. And especially if something was 40 years ago, I think of things I did 10 years ago and I'm like, man, I'm glad I'm not that person anymore. And I don't think that I wouldn't like it if someone held that over my head, because I'm not that person, and I've grown and I've changed, and, glory to God.
Amen.
That, he redeems and he forgives and he gives us that fresh start. And, so, I from all sides, I just don't like this. Like, let's see how many skeletons we can dig up on these political people. And I think that it's this sort of thing that keeps people from wanting to run for office. Like, why would I want to run for office if they're going to, who signs up for that? I mean, we've got to, like, when do we put it? When does it end?
So that's exactly it. And again, I'm not a victim. I think what like today, my wife was just here. I'm in my office, and my wife was just in prior to this.
Oh, and, hi, Ann.
Yeah, she's out, but I will tell her that she loves you. But I'll tell her that.
Tell her hi.
I will. And she was So when Jason called, she was in my office and crying. I mean, crying. And I'm
I'm
so
sure.
protective. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I was, boy, Meaty and those guys, boy, they cut deep and they don't care. And I'm not trying to, again, but my wife was here crying and I'm babbling. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, but you're right. I am human and I'm not going to apologize for being human. And there are some, what I will say is this, there is redemption. And that's what I represent. I represent anyone who believes that they can't, you can. Anybody that believes that um, there's something wrong with me, there's not. Don't let anybody reside in your mind or your heart and never give up on life or yourself. That is something that I can do as the chief executive officer of this state, to do
Mhm.
prison reform so we don't release people back out in the community that got them in jail, to bring rehabilitation, to bring trades, to bring certification programs for those who are wanting to change their life. So no, we're not going to judge because that's above our pay grade. We're going to love. We're going to lift people up out of poverty and despair. We're not going to push people down. And I'm here to talk about solutions with actions. I'm here to bring hope, not to bring fear, not to attack. So what happened today and what they're trying to do, and they went into such depth, and what my wife was reading as I was talking to my attorney, and it was so disheartening, not for me as a victim, but that they would go into such depth. It, when you get a chance to look at it, I mean, you're going to see this, to say not nice, but boy, they brought the whammy on that. And stolen valor, that's a deep cut, to take away 23 years of military service with two events, and the words, a reprimand, the lowest form, not even a punishment, but an administrative action. But the words in that article, testimony or from non-disclosed individuals, and then experts, JAG experts. When I talked to the Washington State Judge Advocate General's office, who says this was illegally gotten, wow. And we know Jason supports Dave. I mean, we know Brandy supports Dave. We know Ari supports Dave, all of them. But wow, the big tent. You wanted me for your lieutenant governor and will pay me all these hundreds of thousands of dollars. But as soon as I said no and got in your way, you would ruin my life and my family. That should be a message to all citizens of this state of what we're dealing with. And I don't mean that I will forgive them. I will. I do right now. I forgive them. You will not take this, my heart, or what I believe in. But we must do better. And I can start right now with forgiveness. I can start right now with bringing this message of hope, to say, let me take this hit. Let me take this hit and in turn return forgiveness and give love and say, I will stay strong. We will do what we must do to protect our family and to keep our campaign moving. But I'm not going to do this with hate. I'm not going to do this with bitterness. I will put out a statement. I will bring clarity. We will bring more truth. I will send documents out, and I will try to protect anybody I can, because that's the right thing to do. And the
Mhm.
Washington Army National Guard is my family, and I will not burn it down. I won't. I don't care. I won't. And if people will distrust me, but I will bring documents. I don't care. I'll take the hit, but I will not burn down my family. People said sue them. Well, that is not my intent, because I will not take out my family. I have an honorable discharge, and I take honor in serving as a citizen soldier of the state. I will not let them take that away from me because of politics. So there is the nature of my character, everyone. Don't fall for this.
Yeah.
Fight, fight for that. And that's where I'm
Amen.
at.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I just I love your message of hope, and I would just encourage you. I know, sometimes you probably have to, sort of fake it a little bit. You might be feeling broken inside, but just keep that message of hope going. And I always it's lyrics to some song. It's an older song. I don't even remember what it is, but use your pain for power, right? And you can use that when you take that pain that you're feeling and use that for your purpose and passion and power. It can, it can bring really big results. And so I just want to encourage you to keep going and to, acknowledge that hurt, but use that to move you forward, because you have a big army supporting you,
Yeah.
that is totally behind you. And it's neat to see that movement and that hope that message of hope is inspiring people in Washington. And so thank you for that. And I just want, like, we've been like an hour and 45 minutes now, and I have a bunch of questions that I didn't get to ask. So it's late for me. It's almost midnight for
I
me.
know. So I'm
But
sorry.
but I've enjoyed this discussion, and I'd love to have you on again.
Absolutely.
So we could I know, we spent a lot of time tonight dealing with sort of this breaking news, and I'm glad that we were able to sort of hash through it together and give you a chance to talk. And but I would love to be able to ask you some more of my other questions if you're game for that, maybe in
100%.
July or something.
Yeah.
We could
Yeah.
do that.
100%. As soon as you want to, I'm here. So whenever you want to,
Cool.
I'll make myself available for you.
Awesome. And I'm sure everybody that's watching already knows where to connect with you, but you're all over social media. Your team is really good about getting out content. You've got a podcast. Is that weekly?
It's weekly. We're going to be on this Thursday at 5 o'clock. And so, boy, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about a lot of what we talked about today. But if they submit their questions, they can go, we'll be live. So you can submit questions ahead of time, or you can submit it on the chat or on Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, YouTube.
Okay,
And
cool.
so, yeah.
Okay. So tune in
Yeah.
Thursday at 5 p.m. All right.
Yes. And
Thanks,
sign up for
everybody.
Conservative
So,
Ladies.
what's that?
Sign up for Conservative Ladies of
That's
Washington and
right.
Conservative Ladies of America.
That's right. We need all of the citizen activists that we can get. And so thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Julie.